panelist, Dr. Aruna Sri Lakshmi, Chairperson, Academic Coordination Committee, a very beloved teacher of all of us. She has been, I won't say a keen researcher, I won't start with a keen researcher, but really a person who is in love with working empirically. She has a love for, working in the field of child labor, education, right to education. She has been actively engaged in the teaching of children, the child labor, the brick-lane children. So, Aruna ma'am, she has been an authority of labor law, and we really look up to her. And it's an honor, ma'am, to have you here in this conference. And we would like to hear something from you. Over to you, Aruna ma'am.
Thank you, Kunti. I hope my voice is audible. I'm
Yes,
audible.
ma'am, it is audible. Yeah, it is audible, ma'am.
Yeah. A very good morning to all the distinguished dignitaries who are participating in this national conference on right to education, and my wishes to our Vice Chancellor in charge, Yogesh Pratap Singh, and Madam Aparajita, Madam Member of Parliament, whom we have witnessed the powerful message she has given to all of us. And she made us think through. And when now we have to be silent and start thinking as to how we can implement the Right to Education Act. And an introspection in our travel down the lane 10 years with respect to the passing of the Right to Education Act, which is the need of the hour today. I thank the Legal Aid Society for taking initiative in collaboration with the sarkarischool.in and invited me to be a part of it. Having heard to our Vice Chancellor and Madam, I have not much to deliberate in the first session because the themes that have been given are still awaited to be heard to. But however, I'll take to a little developments that have taken place in the Right to Education Act. And before I go into that, I have a very strong faith in a quote which says, God is never disappointed when he brings a child into the world. It says every child that comes into the world comes with a message that God is not yet disappointed. Therefore, child has the potential, child is need to be nurtured, and the development of the child is what we look forward. And going to the UNHRC has brought these ideals into reality by having a convention for ourselves where it recognized child's right to survival, child's right to development, child right to participation, and a right against exploitation. These four have been the main themes with which India has ratified. And before we venture into knowing about the developments that have taken place, I think this is a right time we have to acknowledge the efforts made by many great people prior to the independence, which stood as a precursor, where the universal elementary education was insisted. The provincial governments and the provincial states have brought out certain enactments where they provided that children should be given free and compulsory education. And some states have also insisted for girls' education, so which is really laudable. And later on, we found that the judiciary proactive decisions which read Article 21, right to life, includes many other things, and one important right is right to education, right from TMA Pi Foundation case, and then the Unikrishnan case we have seen through, and converting the directive principles of state policy into the fundamental right, as our Vice Chancellor has already deliberated, into Article 21A, which has strongly now given a right to the children a free and compulsory education. Now, when we look back to we are all aware, just to recapitulate, we are all aware that we have certain rights have been created to children under the Right to Education Act. And most importantly, we have the rights relating to their free and compulsory education. Then they have a right to admission, class appropriate to the age, and a right to transfer, right of 25% reservation for them for the economic and backward and weaker sections, and they cannot be denied of admission, and they cannot be detained in the classes where they are studying, and there cannot be any physical punishment or any harassment that can happen, and some remedy is also provided, along with the role of the teachers, responsibility of the teachers, and certain important goals that have been set under the Right to Education Act, which was passed in 2009. Now, later in 2012, as we are aware, certain amendments have taken place where they said right of child to free and compulsory education, barring 29, section 29 with respect to the curriculum, and section 30, that is completion of the elementary education. Now, these completing the compulsory education has been one of the important goals with which the right to education has been passed. So they made it specific with regard to that, and the children are conferred now with the right to education, subjecting them to section 29 and 30 of the Act. And they have also exempted by virtue of this Amendment Act some of the Vedic Pathshalas and the educational institutions primarily imparting religious instructions. And they have included the child with a disability into the Act, that is Persons with Disabilities Act, who are considered to be disabled under Act of 1995, and also the National Trust for Welfare of Persons Act, people dealing with the autism and cerebral palsy. They have been brought under the purview of the definition of the child, and this amendment was also affected. And with regard to the minority and religious institutions that are going to deal with, the school management committees shall perform their duties. Their function would be only advisory in nature, and the teacher pupil ratio that has to be rectified within the period of 3 years. And they have also inserted one new section under the Act, 2012 Act, section 39, where it says central government has to remove all these difficulties which are there with respect to the Right to Education Act within a period of 3 years. Now, later we find another development in 2017, where it has added one more proviso to section 23, stating that the teacher who have been on position by the 31st March 2015, whatever minimum qualifications they have to comply with, the time limit that has been given was 4 years. For others, it was 5 years. And then we find that an important amendment that has taken place in the year 2019. Now, this 2019, it was to rebuild the educational institutions and the system, and to remove some kind of adverse effects in the learning levels. They said they can conduct the regular examinations to the classes 5 and 8, And if the child fails in the examination, within 2 months, examination shall be conducted. And even then, if the child is not able to clear the examination, the state government is empowered to take a decision whether the child shall be promoted or detained. Now, this is one glaring difference we find under the RTE 2009 Act and the 2019 enactment that has the amendment that has taken place. Now, with these few changes, the new educational policy now that we are with, as we know that it has categorized into foundational literacy and the preschooling learning, categorized them, and it firmly wanted to travel towards a competency based assessment in the schools, and there is government standards setting in the schools, and the most importantly, it is the curriculum pedagogy and those reforms that are to be brought. This is one important area I find very crucial in the development of the child, because section 29 of the RTE Act thrusts upon one aspect of it, that is the curriculum development, where the child has to be imbibed with the constitutional values. Now, this is one missing element we find in the schools, where not much thrust is being given. Now, what are these constitutional aims or the values that we want to impart to the child? What we are talking about, the holistic development, is what exactly it is going to address upon. So I consider them on three levels. One is the constitutional values, the second one is the ethical values, the third one is the moral values, which is the most neglected part of it in the schools, which requires a very serious attention when a child is being nurtured from class 1. As they said, the involvement of the child in the various practical activities should involve and lead the child to the aspect of their moral values in the person. That is very important, that is going to develop him in a better citizen. Now, what are these constitutional values we are talking about? Now, what we talk about, the liberty, how much liberty a child has to use. What does he mean by equality? What does he mean by dignity? So these are all the unity. Unity is one missing element that we find in the nation, right? Amongst all of us, this is what we lack: unity and fraternity. These are the two important constitutional values that are set in the preamble of the Constitution, which is very silently kept apart. We concentrate only on justice, equality, and liberty. Right? The unity and the fraternity is what we have to thrust upon today, to see that a child is properly developed and learn to live in a society among the people, to live down to the core of the people, to know, understand the problems of the people, to render community service to the people. Now, these are all what we aspire to bring about in the child. Now, when we talk about the ethical values, again, it talks about the integrity of a child, the transparency he should maintain, the accountability he should have, the impartiality he should have, and the public welfare and the equity which he has to maintain in the society is also to be imbibed to the child. And the moral values, as I said, the character building, what we are finding these words in the national educational policies. This character building is possible only when at the personal level a student is honest, a student is truthful for himself, a student is upright in his behavior. If a student has honesty in his acts, if a student is dutiful, discharges his duty to the fullest extent, as madam has said, give your 100% best to whatever act you do, only then the moral values are going to be nurtured in a child. Now, this is one aspect I would like to and the other aspect we find in the national educational policy is the education ecosystem, where the institution has to link up with the parents, with the students, as well as the teachers to establish a proper, balanced, healthy educational environment. Now, if we look at there is an academic audit that was conducted in 2017 where they have identified some of the gaps in the implementation of the RTE Act. One is with respect to the poor financial internal control, where the funds are not going to be, were not properly used. And the second one is where are the deviations in the Right to Education Act. So as Madam said, the retention part, admission is okay, but the retention is becoming a very difficult part, and parallelly, the need for economic support by the child and putting the child into the child labor activities is another part which brings down the child from the school to the labor. Though the Act has, under the Child Labor Amendment, Adolescent and Amendment Act, also it has balanced and it defined a child as defined under the RTE Act. There is a harmonious construction that has taken place in the Act. But still in reality, when we go to the field trips and all, we find that every parent who is sending the child to the labor is only concerned about the income that the child is going to add to the family compared to the education that they are going to get from going to the school. So this is one particular aspect where parents need to be empowered, and this empowering requires a lot of commitment. So the role and responsibility of the teacher, it must start from within, where the teacher starts loving the child and see that the child grows under his guidance to a particular extent, because whatever water is there in the tank, the same water comes in the tap. Similarly, whatever the teacher tells, the same becomes the teacher becomes the role model for a student. So therefore, the deviations that they have identified in the academic audit in 2017 was with respect to the non-maintenance of the records, and the children above 14 are being retained. And the third one is schools are run without recognition and there is inadequate teacher pupil ratio. Similarly, they have suggested for how to overcome all these difficulties, and then so that we will be able to implement them properly. I think Madam Usha Khare, who is going to be a panelist here, I was hearing to her school and how she was complying with the school and what effort she is making in that particular aspect is really laudable. I was really inspired, where she has categorically shown as to how you can bring up a school in a proper way with visionary, with full focus on the child, where you encourage the child full potential to be developed during the school days in the school, where they rise to heights. Right? Though there are few challenges that are there, one important challenge is with respect to the honesty and hard working and the passion to develop the child is one important aspect. The right to education through training has to impart to the teachers who are there, and the freedom to work and recognition, and they enjoy the work that they are going to do. So as we know that education, whatever we are talking, should be available, it should be accessible, it should be acceptable, and it should be adaptable. So all these would be possible only when the commitment by each and every stakeholder is there in the given society. And I do not want to take much of your time because already I think we are running late for the second session. But however, we need to keep in mind that now we have traveled from from the place where we want to instill the importance of education into the minds of the people. We have traveled 10 years and we have seen the development that has taken place, and now we are moving with a next step ahead where we want to take the child along with us, develop the child in a holistic manner, in a more better equipped child, and with the digital economy that is coming, to develop the competencies of the child. And the role and responsibility of the teacher is going to be very crucial in this particular mission that a teacher is going to hold. So that education which is taught for life is what we require. Education should be for life, but not for mere living. So this character building is possible through these, and the governments, state government, central government have been making efforts, and we will have to wait and test to the time where we reach our mission and goal of the right to education. Thank you. With these few words, I would like to take this.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for elucidating the values that we need, and also underlining the moral values, the ethical values, the constitutional values of education, and also the deviating principles that we would need to sustain a quality education. And we are really elated to hear your words on education. So I would like to sum up this session just with a single sentence, that education is needed purposefully. The purpose of education is to ensure empowerment, to ensure capacitation. As Madam Aprajita Sarangi has rightly mentioned, certain ambits that we need to look upon, that we need to focus upon. So with this, I think we come to the end of the inaugural session for the conference. And over to you, Anjali and Abhishek, for the further work of the conference. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your presence. Thank you so much, Yogesh sir, for your esteemed presence in the inaugural session.
Thank you, Kunti, Nikita, Anjali, Aruna ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
All the best for the next session.
Thank you so much. Thank you so